if we look at it like this, it's like, so time is this illusion, right? And the future is anything but certain. We have, in our mind, we have all these different futures. You have this, wouldn't that be nice if future? You have a vision for your business future. You have this is what I think is gonna happen. This is what I'm afraid will happen. Oh, this would be worst case scenario. You have all these futures. And the one that you feed is the one that you start to live into. And the future that you live into and the future you feed is literally what creates you. And so who you are in the present is the byproduct of the future you choose to live into.
Hi, my friend James Wedmore is here today on the podcast. And in this episode, we are talking about 5D, the 5D and money, how our spiritual context can help us make more money, live in a more liberated way. James is going to talk about his story going all the way from absolutely despising and completely rejecting spiritual principles to now using them as the bedrock to his 8-figure business. And I think you're particularly going to like the story that he tells of how he went in 1 year from 2 million in revenue to 10 million in revenue. And it wasn't a new business strategy. It wasn't some new funnel. And I can't wait for you to enjoy the episode. Welcome to Plenty. I'm your host, Kate Northrup, and together we are going on a journey to help you have an incredible relationship with money, time, and energy, and to have abundance on every possible level. Every week, we're going to dive in with experts and insights to help you unlock a life of plenty. Let's go fill our cups.
Please note that the opinions and perspectives of the guests on the Plenty podcast are not necessarily reflective of the opinions and perspectives of Kate Northrup or anyone who works within the Kate Northrup brand.
Hi, James.
Kate. Hey.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having a dude on your podcast.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thrilled to have you. You're one of 3.
Yeah.
So far.
I feel very honored.
We'll see. Few and far between.
Yes.
We'll see how
we'll
you
see
do.
if we actually air this.
This is a test.
I don't know. Just because we're recording doesn't mean we're going to do anything with this. We'll see.
No, I've never recorded an episode and not put it out.
I have.
You have?
Many times.
Really?
All the time. Not all the time. That's
sometimes.
Extreme. Absolutely.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Because it's just not good enough.
I wouldn't use I don't think it's fair to say not good enough.
But it just doesn't, it's not the vibe?
I've had episodes, it's not the vibe.
Yeah.
I've had people come on for the wrong reasons, you know, even to the point where people are like, hey, can you make sure to like post this right before my launch? And it's like, oh, I'm sorry. Is that the only reason you came on? And just not providing anything for people. Yeah. And then yes, I've had episodes where it was more of like I didn't know the person, which is always interesting, which is why I love that we're doing this, because I have found, and I don't know what your experience has been, is that you can get a big name, but the episodes that you have of somebody that you have a relationship with are always better.
Well, because that is frequency. That's energy. People can feel the energy between two people, and people can feel when there's not. Yeah. And it's interesting. Like we've been doing, I mean, this version of the podcast is new-ish, but we started a different iteration of it in 2016. And sometimes, you know, we would have these very big, sometimes household names on and think that maybe those episodes would do well. Nobody cared. And then, yes, often it was from people who
But it's not just because nobody cared. Like
well,
a lot of times there is no... there's no magic between your interviewer and the guest. And I've had that where it's like, so tell me, have you been doing this a long time? Yes. Oh. Is this something you've always been interested in?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, this is gonna suck. And I've not aired those.
No,
I'm like,
can't.
This is uncomfortable, and it has both people not really look good.
So painful.
So I would be TLDR, too long didn't listen. I would be okay if you decide. I would understand if you said, you know what, James,
that's not gonna happen.
It didn't make the plenty cut.
It didn't make the plenty cut. The bar is high. We'll see.
It is high.
Okay. So I was recently listening to something you were talking about, and I kind of knew this story anyway, but it reminded me. You are a very out there guy.
Oh.
And you are really open to the possibility of a lot of things being true that we can't see or prove with the quote unquote scientific method in the way we understand 3D reality, or like the way the normies understand.
The normies.
The muggles.
Yeah, the muggles. I love this.
But I feel like you, based on what I know about your story, so when we met, you were emerging, I think, more from the muggle world. But you were definitely like, you told this story of how your mom and your sister, or maybe it was just your mom, gave you an Abraham Hicks book and you threw it in the trash.
In front of her.
I cannot
as an
believe
act of
you
defiance.
did that. And what was it that made you so sure that you knew how the world worked at that time?
Because I'm a man. And
and you don't fit in my chair.
And my muscles are breaking. I'm the Hulk of podcasting. No, but so that's the answer is like, I had that, what I call like that man's pride. And I had been spending a couple of years trying to build a business. And I had two incredible parents that you, whether you want to or not, you observe and you model and you learn. And I had a really weird mom and a really weird sister, still very weird, you know, but that was how I perceived it. It was like, they're weird. They're talking about fairies and crystals and manifesting. I'm like, you're weird. And then I had my father, who was the hardest working still to this day. He passed a couple years ago, but I've never met someone work as hard as him. And so it kind of felt like at a point in my life, I had to choose a lane, and I chose his lane. And so when I opened, my mom gives me this book for my birthday, and the book is Ask and It Is Given. Well, that sounds phenomenal. Like, give me some of that. I want what's coming to me. Give it to me. So, and I start reading, and the foreword talks about we are channeling these beings coming, and I'm like, nope. And in front of her, I'm like, this belongs here. And don't you ever give me that stuff ever again. And if I look back on that, because hindsight's 20/20, and I couldn't see at the time what I could see today, is it confronted and threatened everything that I had decided is my operating system for how to get what I want. And can you imagine, especially for a dude, when you've rooted so much of your value and your worth in, you gotta put a certain amount of effort in and sacrifice enough, and you've been doing that, and someone tells you there's actually an easier way, and it doesn't have to be that hard, and you're doing it wrong, right? You know, in that way, you're doing it wrong. And that's how I received it. So it was garbage to me because I was not ready to receive it at that time. And now I like preach all that from a mountaintop, which is like funny, ironic,
And you teach it like in a very effective way, as someone who has been believing in fairies since I was born and never stopped.
You want to hear a cool, weird story?
About fairies?
About fairies.
Yes.
Okay. This is so awesome. So I have this like amazing connection with my nephew, Ewan. He's 8 years old. Like Ewan McGregor. E-W-A-N is his name, Ewan.
Right.
And just so everyone knows.
Not you and
Yeah, you
Bob.
and, or you win, or who won? You won. Ewan is his name, and Ewan McGregor, and which I was just pronouncing it Ewan.
But his last name is not McGregor.
No. Can we cut all this? This is not making the cut. And so he would go to his mom, my sister, and say, like when he was really young, maybe 4, 3, and say, "Mom, there's bees under my bed. Bees." And she was like freaking out.
Yeah.
Like, what is there like a beehive in our house? And she's looking, there's no bees, little child. Like a week or two later, they're watching a cartoon of fairies. And he goes, "Mom, bees, bees." And she just was like, oh my gosh.
Oh
so
my God.
I thought that was really cool.
That's really magical. Yeah. Have you ever read The Polar Express?
As a child, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you read it again, I'll tell you how it ends. And maybe you remember this. So the other day, Ruby asked me to read her The Polar Express. It's May, but anyway, we're just doing
Christmas in the summer.
We're just doing Christmas in May. And at the end of the book, there's this bell, and only children can hear it.
Yeah.
And then over time, every Christmas morning, even one day, his sister could no longer hear the bell, but the author is still hearing the bell, even though he's a grown-up, right?
Yes.
Because he still believes in magic.
Yes.
And I was reading that to Ruby, and I just couldn't finish the book without crying because, like, that's real.
Because it's true. I think there is so much truth that comes through folklore, through stories, through all that. It's a metaphor, But it's absolutely true that what the story of our life is that we lose that. We lose that divine connection and get rooted and sucked into this 3D only. And then the rest of our life is, once we realize that, it's like finding our way back.
Yes.
And to hear the whistle again, you know.
To hear the whistle or the bell.
Or the bell. Was it a bell or a whistle?
It was a bell. It was a jingle bell.
Okay, cut that too.
From the reindeers.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Anyway.
I don't know why I said it. This is like a train whistle. There we go. I read it as a kid. I'm still trying to hear the whistle.
So in that moment, you're with your mom. You throw the book in the trash.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that one.
Like a spiteful
I was a
mother
jerk.
ever.
Yeah.
And so can you explain, because I think you explain it really beautifully, what is happening in our inner mechanics when we are presented with new information or a new skill set or a new opportunity or even like literally new evidence that proves our existing paradigm wrong?
Yeah.
What happens in that moment? What was happening inside you in your understanding?
You know, it's a really... this is why today I am just always impressed by anybody who does grow and experiences real growth, because I also say that a lot of people lie to themselves that they are learning when they're really not, because they say one of two things. They say, thanks for the reminder, this resonates so much, or no, that's not true, I don't agree, and let me tell you why. Both of those are just either confirming or rejecting. So you're confirming what's already within or rejecting anything that threatens. And so a lot of people, I think, maybe if they think they're going through Instagram or scrolling or listening to a bunch of podcasts, they're actually really not learning. And I had to wake up to that too. I was doing that confirming, rejecting thing. And it was really unconscious to me. And why it's such a commendable act to truly learn is because it begins to threaten everything that you have believed to be true. And that can be a very scary experience, because it's like the very floor that you stand on starts to fall through, because the implications are vast. If this isn't true, what else is not true? And we attach so much of who we are to these, what I see them in my mind as little building blocks. Like I always think of, I love music and I love Pink Floyd. And so Pink Floyd had this infamous album called The Wall. And he talks about all these events in his life built up a wall. Now, the wall was kind of metaphorical of like keeping everyone out and guarding. It was like walling up his heart. But every little event that happened in his life was like a brick in that wall, right? And I see that as the same thing for us. We go through life, things happen to us. We start to decide what is, what isn't. You know, you cut yourself on a knife. You go, knives are sharp, so don't touch that end of the knife. But it happens and don't you fall in love, you'll get hurt, don't fall, you know. And some of us have bigger bricks and a lot of them, and then it gets cemented into this certain way of life. And then we stop looking at those bricks. We stop questioning them. We don't even ask ourselves anymore, is that really true? And it becomes like, I think a great metaphor is the water to a fish. Like it's everywhere, so it's nowhere at the same time. And if you've ever heard that little story of like the fish passes by the other fish and it's like, hey, the water's nice today. And the fish is like, what the heck is water, right? And that's kind of what it is. It's like a belief is a perceived truth. So we don't interact with a belief as a belief. We interact with it as this is the way it is. This is just how it is. This is how people are. This is how the world is. This is how I am. And we stop questioning that. And so to start that journey again is really confronting, because the implications are like, if this is not true, what else have I been believing that isn't true? And when your identity and your value and your worth is tied up into it, it can become very scary to begin that until you start. And then it's like a beautiful unfolding and discovery process.
But it requires a massive ego death, which can really feel like death, which is why we don't do it.
And I think this is a distinction that I've been trying to bring to as many people as possible. This is what I call on my spiritual path the shamanic death, or the ego death. And the ego death is such a powerful distinction, because when you're going through something, the moment you declare it an ego death, it's like something powerful occurs, because I think a default way that we go, like problems, challenges, hard times in our life are inevitable. You can't get out of life without the good, the bad, the ugly, right? And so when you can pause for a moment and say, like, I think I'm having an ego death, the way in which you now relate to it can change, because there's a deeper implication there that if this is what you're going through, a challenging thing is an ego death, that means you're in the process of letting go of something that no longer serves you. And it's hard and it's challenging only because we want to hold on to it.
Yeah.
And so the faster we can let go of it, and kind of, boy, that takes so much trust, that I've been holding so tightly onto this because this is what's worked in the past for me, and this is what's really helped me, and I can't let this go. But it's like the universe or God or your higher self is you got to let this go. And when you take on a life where you are asking for growth, when you take on a life where you're asking to end up in a place where you've never been before, that is required. That is absolutely required, because you know the simple truth of if you've always done if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten. And so it's hard for us to let that go. And the biggest ego or shamanic deaths that I've had were big because it was like life is trying to blow up something, and then we want to put it all back together instead of like let it
fall apart.
Yeah. So I believe it's threatening your entire, there's a role like the ego plays of protecting that and makes it its job to make that true.
Yes.
And then we become so self-identified with it that if that's not true, maybe I'm not true, or I'm not real. If that's a lie, I'm a lie, and it's like one and the same. And when you can have separation from that, and that's why I think it's really good when people use terms like ego. I use a phrase from the Toltecan philosophy called the tonal, which the tonal is the most similar parallel to a word like ego, which is like your 3D existence. And the shaman that I started working with years ago, one of the first things he said to me, and this is like a mind bender, is like who you are is when you look in the mirror and say James or Kate is the smallest, tiniest aspect of who you truly are. And that's just your pinky. Yet we associate and identify everything with just that. And then we let that pinky run the show, right? And so the pinky doesn't like it, and we think we are the pinky, and then we ignore this completely higher aspect of us that exists. And so the shamanic deaths are happening because we're still letting the pinky run the show. And you can only do that for so long. You will not win. Like if you're arm wrestling against the pinky's going to lose. But it becomes painful because we think we can, and we fight for that, And so today I look back at like when we first met, it's like 13 years ago at this point.
Yeah, it was 2012.
And I've had a lot of growth, and my business has had a lot of growth, and it all comes back because I had to learn how to just keep letting go and, be okay with that. Being okay with, okay, that's not true. And even just a few years ago, I was at an event, and it was like an NLP workshop, and they're like teaching little things, and they had a list of beliefs. This is just a few years ago. This is crazy. And there was a list of things that like maybe are beliefs, and one of them was like, I'm not athletic. And I just go, well, that's not a belief. That's just true. And I, wait, yeah. Could that, what? That's just a belief? And I remember like going home and telling my family this, and they were like, yeah, we just thought you were being really humble, but it's like you picked up surfing. Remember when I was surfing with you guys in Costa Rica? And you skateboard and you surf and you snowboard and you do all these kind of things. It's like, and then you'd walk around saying you're not athletic. And we're like, we just thought you were trying to be really humble, but it came off weird because it's just not true. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it's endless.
It is endless.
And I think it's hard to get started. I think I found myself like so rooted in something that it's like hard to start that process, but then once you do, it's like an unraveling and an uncoupling of a lot of things we need to unlearn.
And it is uncomfortable, but it's also fun.
I do find it really fun.
Yeah, it is fun. And like once you get that first hit of the transformation of letting go of the old ways or letting go of the old, it's so liberating that you want to keep going.
But then there's this other side of it, which is like, and this is obviously what we see in like a personal and spiritual development world, that people get addicted to insights. And it's just about the dopamine hit of, what I realized about myself today. And I didn't ever want that to be me, because I came in to this stuff very skeptical. I was like, that's why I'm throwing away books that are trying to help me. Jeez, jerky son. And I saw that there were a lot of this is my mid-20s judgy dude self, seeing people going to these workshops and having all these personal growth, but they're like in the same place years later. They're
Yes,
like,
right.
you know, and not to say anything too bad. You see people going to the same Tony Robbins events for a day. Oh, I've been coming here for 10 years. And I was like, but like, what do you have? And I was very like, but what do you have to show for it? And I didn't want to be that person. And so I think every time today that I get any nugget, any gem, any discovery, any insight, I need that integrated within me as soon as possible. Like, I don't want to just have the awareness of it. I want it to be integrated and applied and true. I want to act from that place. And I think that takes another step.
And from, you know, kind of like a neurology standpoint, a neuroscience standpoint, that part that is trying to protect us is actually because it's very expensive energetically to rewire the brain and the nervous system.
Right.
It takes a lot of just like energy physically in our bodies and our unconscious. Our nervous system is always trying to protect our resources. So when presented with a new belief, when presented with a new skill set, when presented with a possibility to integrate something new, our unconscious is going to do everything possible to prevent us from doing that because it's trying to save energy.
Yeah.
And if our stress bucket, our threat bucket is already full, it's also going to, for sure, not let us integrate those new things until sometimes things get so bad that we have to. And so I'm curious, like, did you have a moment that forced you to begin to open up to there might be something going on in the world other than what we can see, touch, taste, smell, and measure?
I think secretly I was always what people label today like a seeker, but I didn't realize that at first. But yes, and I think the thing that's important is problems in our life really are a blessing because of what you just described, because that's how most of us will grow, is when things get bad enough, you know? When the pain of not changing is perceived as greater than the pain of change, we often change. And so pain and problems can become a blessing in our lives because it gets us to pay attention. So I've had many of those in my life. And, you know, this was a simple one, and I've shared this story before, but when I was broke and like trying to build a business, and I was working for 4 years and didn't have any, I mean, I was like maybe making $20,000 a year.
And you were working a lot.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not like you weren't dedicated.
No,
it's not like you weren't trying.
No, and that's why I preach so many of the things I do today, because I decided to do my dad's workaholic strategy. And I got addicted to Adderall, which is like basically a legal form of speed. I mean, you're on freaking crack. Like, it's like having 20 cups of coffee with like hyper focus and out the jitters. And I'm working 14 hours a day, every day. I didn't take a day off, moved back in with mom and dad. And I'm like, I'm going to make this work. And I was committed. I was passionate. I was all the things in the 3D that people told you need to be. And I said, I'm the hardest working person I know next to my dad, so I'll make this work. And I did that for 4 years, and it was killing me. And, you know, the first thing that really opened me up to it was when I went to, speaking of Tony Robbins, was when I went to go get my girlfriend at the time, her birthday gift. She wanted tickets to this Tony Robbins event, and it was in town, and I couldn't afford it. I had $1 to my name. And I even asked the person, the ticket rep, if I could do a payment plan, and they laughed at me on the phone, which is just to put a little salt in the wound there. And I mean, I had 30-something cents in the bank account, so I couldn't even get her a birthday card. And I think that put everything in perspective for me, because the tricky thing about busyness is it keeps the mind busy. It keeps us distracted from what we need to be paying attention to. And so there's this absolute seduction to staying busy. And I was just sitting there in a belief of, as long as I stay busy, something will stick. And then I pull my head up out of the water for a moment. I'm like, I can't even afford, like, that was this dark thought. I was like, how pathetic am I that I can't even get her a birthday card? But it was also a really beautiful moment because this was about somebody else. And so I think sometimes when it comes to these other topics, like pulling into a new reality and manifesting your dreams, there was something more powerful for it when it was for somebody else. And that's what it took. I was like, this ain't about me. You know, it's kind of like, God, this isn't for me. So I'm not trying to be selfish here and but I know this will make her happy. And what happened in that was, you know, all those books I threw away in the garbage. I did start to read them by this time, but I was just not, I was like, this is BS.
You weren't buying it.
I wasn't really buying it. But I said, what do I got to lose? And that's where like problems become good. It's like when you're in a place where it's like, what do I got to lose? It's like, and now you are ready to learn, right? Because there's nothing else to lose. Like all the ways you think to do it, you've exhausted, it still ain't working. So what do you got to lose? And that's where I was. Now here's what happened. I realized a belief that I had, and it was really simple, was the wiring was, if I want the tickets, I need the money, and I have to work hard to get the money so that I can buy the tickets. And I had this simple thought of seeing that, because awareness, right, is everything. And then going, what if I can just bypass all that and just say what we now say today, F the how for now, and just decide to be there? What if I just decide I'm going to be there? And that to me is where like things like manifesting become really fun, because it's not always about like, okay, I got to create the perfect plan to make it happen. Sometimes we do, but sometimes I just want us to be there. And 2 days later, a friend calls me up to go play tennis. And I didn't, of course, I'm broke. I can't be playing tennis right now. Are you kidding? I got to make some money. I can't even afford to get to the tennis courts to play with you. But I did. I showed up, and within the first 5 minutes of warming up, she asked me what I was working on. I'm like, I'm trying to get this business off the ground. We're doing video services for clients right now. And she just said like, can you do one for me in my business? And I'm like, yeah, oh, great. Yeah. She goes, I'll trade with you Tony Robbins tickets. And I had that moment where like the lightning goes down your spine and you're just like, you get chills all over your body. I'm looking for Ashton Kutcher. Maybe I'm being punked, right? And I'm like, this is a joke, right? Because I'd never had that before. I never had something that was like synchronicity. I'd never had something just like what we could label as like, that's a miracle. That 2 days earlier, you're praying that you could be there and give someone you love this experience and still have no means to make that happen. And then 48 hours later, someone's offering it to you without you asking. And that was surreal to me. I mean, that was the moment I said, I'm not gonna be a doubter anymore. I'm not gonna be such a skeptic. And I think the way we are rooted, like, if there's one thing I really want people to take away, which I've been sharing lately, is this whole 3D plane that we exist on is very seductive. And it pulls us in. Like, the illusion is so real that it convinces us that nothing else is real, to the point that we use the illusion as the litmus test for more of what is real, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I was like, and so we will constantly, if we're not careful and vigilant in our own lives and our own perceptions, we will lull ourselves back to sleep. And it's easy to be a skeptic. And I don't want to say there's anything wrong with being a skeptic, but it's easy to be a skeptic. And that's just all I've been doing. It's easy to doubt. It's easy to doubt. And it actually takes a level of courage and faith to like open yourself up to what you and I have been saying for over a decade, a margin for miracles in your life. And then your life just takes on, it's like comes out in Technicolor, because everything just seems so much more beautifully orchestrated and designed. And I said, well, if this worked, I think I can keep doing this, because I remember where I was standing when I said, I'm going to make this happen. And I remember what I did internally. I was like, I can do this again. And I did. And then that just kind of set me off on a journey. And it hasn't steered me wrong up till this point. Yeah. So and I didn't look back. What's
been so cool to witness? I mean, when we met, you were already like kind of cooking along with your business in, you know, to some degrees, way different iteration than it is now.
When we had met, my business...
Okay, maybe this is not true.
No. I just want to give a little more context.
You knew what you were doing.
Well, you know, just because I look good doesn't mean it... No, so when we met, I was like spring of 2012.
Yes.
I remember it like it was yesterday. And my business had just hit in September of 2011. I had not a lot of money in my bank account. And then we did this big launch promotion with my YouTube program, and it blew up. And then there's a whole story there. We made $400,000 in 30 days, selling a $97 online course. And that was at the tail end of 4.5 years of this struggle. So the Tony Robbins was like 2009, 2010. So I was like learning it, but for 4.5 years, I wanted so badly. I want to have my own business. I wanted to be on the internet, and I want to make tons of money. And all of a sudden, overnight, I did. And I hit a wall, which I later saw was I fell into this like really dark depression, which I'd never had before, and I'm very grateful I haven't had since. But I can look back and say I was like depressed. Like I stopped working. You just have this huge check handed to you, and you make all this money overnight. All these thousands. All of a sudden, went from no customers to thousands overnight, and all these opportunities. And I didn't want to get off the couch. Like I didn't want to work. I felt empty, and it was really simple in hindsight why that was, because I had put all the significance, the meaning, and my identity wrapped up into the condition of what will change within me once that happens. And I felt exactly the same.
Right.
Like I wasn't any more worthy or deserving or loved or whatever in my own perception once I looked at my bank account. Nothing changed. And so that was really hard, because like all the things that had been secretly these invisible drivers were now like I had it, but nothing changed. That was a really scary moment. So that was December. Okay, just to give
shortly before
we met in like March of 2012,
Yeah.
and in December I'm in this like deep dark depression where like I didn't want to get off the couch. I was like drinking, and like I'm like I don't drink. I'm drinking. I'm like smoking pot, and I'm like what is happening here?
Wow.
And then I'll tell you what did happen. 2 things happened that changed my life out of that spot. First thing is I got a testimonial. I remember the first testimonial I got because I still work with this person today, and that's Jason Brown, and he was one of the first testimonials that came in from that program. And it was just a post in our little group. And he said, holy crap, you guys, this program actually works. Check this out. I just followed this and then did this, and I just got this client now. And I read that, and it was the first testimonial I've ever read or received in my life. It was the first time a complete stranger told me in a roundabout way, here's how you've made a difference in my life. And it was like, as much as I wanted to stay in this kind of dark place, like I was just kind of just miserable, it was like, it kind of lifted me up a little. I was like, wait, no, I'm supposed to feel bad right now, right? It's like, what is this good feeling? I don't like these positive emotions. And more started to come in. And it was a beautiful transition for me, because I went from those old drivers to just like, oh, I can help people. And this is helping people. And it feels really good to help people. Maybe I can just keep helping people. And that target started changing. Now, the other thing that happened is Jen, I had broken up with her at the time. That was probably part of my depression. So we were not together, and she's so sweet and angelic that even broken up with me, she sends me a Christmas gift. I mean, who? The audacity for somebody we're broken up, but I'm still going to be the better person here and send you a Christmas gift. And what she sent me, it arrived right before Christmas, and I refused to open it on Christmas Day. I was, again, more of this like, ego stubbornism was coming through. So I waited until December 26th, and I opened it, and there were these CDs on the law of attraction. And I was like, fine, I'll do it. So the theme in my life was for years, especially the women in my life, because I've just been surrounded by these unbelievably gifted women. Like Jen is a profound psychic. Like she is, I mean, we could do hours of stories of things that just nailed it. My sister, I mean, I grew up with my sister, and she would have dreams. Like one time she had a dream where my mom was taking the china and the nice stuff off of the shelves in the house. And I'm like, what are you doing? She goes, well, your sister had a dream that all these houses fell. So I think we're going to have a big earthquake. And 4 days later, there was and you can Google this, the massive Laguna landslides. Wow. So she had the dream like 4 days before. So she'd have that stuff all the time. So I grew up around all that, right? And so it's like, forcing it into me. I'm like, okay, fine. And I started listening, and it was like, it all connected. It all started to come together, and I got it. Like I finally got all this stuff, and not like I knew everything, but like I was integrating it. And that set me off on a whole nother journey, and then I met you like just a couple months later. So no, my business.
So no, you didn't really know. What
No, I didn't. I mean, if I did, it was like I learned it the day before I met you or something. But
well, I mean, I think there is something to be said for that because you were you were teaching us about outsourcing, and like I have learned many things from you over the years, and I do really appreciate that. And I think that we don't have to have everything figured out in order to be ready to share what we do know.
Right.
And that is
No,
something,
of course not. Yeah.
and like, I think that folks like, because we're so conditioned, and I don't know if this is more women than men, but like this feeling of like, I don't know enough yet. And like, I need to get more certifications. I need to get more, more degrees. I got to go back to grad school. I got to like, somebody needs to give me a stamp of approval to give me permission to be ready.
And when did you learn that you need permission to go do something or follow your dreams or help people?
When you were a child.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
For many times, it's reinforced and ingrained. And it's a really interesting thing, like you say something like that, like, because it's pervasive. I haven't learned enough yet, or there's more I need to learn. That is probably true, that there's more to learn.
For sure, for all of us.
And it's a beautiful place to find yourself in that place of humility and saying, what do I really know? There's so much more to learn. And that can stand by itself. And you can say in the same breath, and I can help people.
Yeah, it can be both at the same time.
It can be both. And it needs to be both, because what I've been doing even in the past 7 years, I've learned so much in 7 years, but I was still getting paid to help people do it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to always be a student and continue to learn more. And because the thing is like, I think where people also fall in that is they think they have to be the best. Like, oh, there's someone who's been doing this longer, or I don't know the most. Like, that's still so 3D. Ego put people on hierarchies.
False hierarchy.
Hierarchies, exactly. And I've always loved that quote, like, to a third grader, the fourth grader is God. And you remember when we were little kids, we looked up to someone who's like 9 months older than you.
I remember when the fifth graders in my elementary school.
Look at those big books they carry around.
So old.
Yep.
So
and
weird.
So cool. Yeah, I know. And so is there someone out there that hasn't learned what you've learned and you could help and you could teach that? And the answer is yes. And actually, one of the biggest things I struggle, the roadblock that gets in the way when I'm working with people is the more I've learned and the more I've gotten myself to, people get threatened and intimidated by that. And they make me an easy out for their own learning. They go, well,
easy for you to say. Yeah.
And I'll share things like, here's something we did and it worked really well. Like, yeah, but you've been doing this for years. I'm like, okay. So I'll teach it to someone who's new, and then I'll share how they did it.
Right.
And they're like, oh, so
I can do that.
Right.
Right, which is such a brilliant technique as a teacher to move around the fact that our brain, our nervous system is always trying to keep us exactly where we are.
Right.
And so it is going to look at a wonderful technique and strategy that would work for you, for me. Let's pretend I'm that person. And it's going to like come up with any reason to get me to not do the thing because it doesn't want me to change. Yeah. So it's a beautiful way to like bypass that for people and help them to be able to metabolize it and actually take it in.
And you know, it's served me well that today, I think for the past like 5 or 6 years, I've been really obsessed with teaching and coaching and like how to actually get something across to somebody so that they learn it, they integrate it, and they apply it. And it's such a fascinating world to dive into. So I'm always looking what 90% of it is addressing the resistance.
Right.
The reason why not, the yeah buts, the objection, the doubt, the fears, and all that. And it's like, if that's all gone, it's like, oh, you mean just do it? And like, that's the funny thing. Like, I'll work with people for a year and we're coaching all these things. And then when they get to this beautiful place, they're like, so like, just do it is basically what you're saying. I'm like, yeah, I didn't want to spoil the ending. But like when everything else is out of the way, like if something feels complicated, this is too complicated, too overwhelming, it's probably that's the distortion of the mind. And when we can like work through all that type of stuff, the things that become like the most successful, we're like, oh, that was actually really easy.
Yeah.
And that's the goal. Is like, let's get everything simple. So what's preventing that or causing that? And I'll say the other thing that just came up for me, which I want to make sure is included here, is something will radically change in your context for life because because, that part of us that wants to keep us where we are, if you found a way to change your relationship with the unknown, and if you were driven and excited and fell in love with the unknown, and like that's what you want, I want to experience and lean into the unknown, whatever that means for you. I think life takes on a whole new meaning. Like that's when we are alive, because I'm experiencing something new and it's different, and I'm exploring my own unknown in this, and that's living. And I don't think people want to get to the end of their life, because I'm always thinking about that. That's why they say death is such a powerful teacher, and be like, oh, I just mastered this one little box and just kept myself in there for 40, 50 years or more. And it's like, I want to keep expanding that and, be an explorer, uncharted territory.
Also that will lengthen your life.
Yes, it will.
Yeah, I mean,
yes, it absolutely
will. The more new stuff you're doing, the more new neural connections, the more vitality, the more youthful. I mean, that's just true. Absolutely. So you'll have more time to do new things, the more new things you do. Yeah. Which is great. You sat down and you were like, what are we going to talk about? And I said, we're going to talk about God and business, or the weird stuff in money. So you do make a tremendous amount of money in your business. And you're also pretty out there.
And you're fucking weird.
And how do I say... and I think that...
and I'm weirder than
probably. I can only imagine what actually might...
It scares a lot of people.
We're weirder than you may know as well.
Yeah.
I'm still...
But I see you.
Unraveling. I'm still unraveling some of my, I'm supposed to be appropriate, and, people are supposed to, I'll keep working on that over the years. You
gotta be digestible for people.
Or maybe not. I don't know. So anyway, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
But I want to know, for you, what are some of those connections, or what have been some of the biggest connections you've experienced between your financial prosperity and your connection to that which is greater than you?
Yeah. So I went to a reader. I don't use the word psychic, because it's this was someone that we knew. Great reputation, and I'm always careful with that, Yeah. I'm just like, oh, look, you can get your palm read today, and then you're making your life decisions off of that, Also,
sometimes the energy in those places is really,
you
really dark and intense.
Yes, and this is someone my mom had worked with for years, and it's like a 1.5 year waiting list to even work with her, and she's amazing. And this was maybe 4 years ago, and she goes, oh, so you've broken the generational curse of poverty in your lineage. And I knew exactly what she was talking about. Oh. I knew exactly what she was talking about. And my grandfather, he immigrated to this country during the Great Depression. So they grew up extremely poor.
From where?
They were from Australia, actually. Yeah, I know. A little fun fact about us, about my family. And he was an entrepreneur. He had an auto garage in Pasadena, California. Actually, up until about 10 years ago, it still said Wedmore & Co. on the garage. The newer owners changed the name, but it was there for many years. And they grew up, really struggled, went through the Great Depression. My dad was born in the late 30s, so they're coming out of that. And I saw that in my family. My dad was very lenient with us. I have stories of I caused trouble as a kid. We have construction sites. My dad would take us to Tijuana to buy fireworks, and I would just go on the construction sites and blow up everything with these M80s. We would put them in the porta potties.
So glad we don't have boys.
And he thought it was hilarious. And the cops
would put fireworks in porta potties.
In the porta potties. Not while anyone was there. We're never trying to harm anybody.
Yeah, but still.
But just to have the poop and the peep just explode was a 12-year-old boy's greatest adventure in life.
Wow.
And the cops came. And my dad would come out and be like, they went that way. And come on, boys, hide inside. And I was like, cool as dad. But if you left the lights on when you left the room, there was hell to pay. If you left the door open,
blow up the porta potty all day, but do not leave on your legs.
Exactly. He didn't care about anything else. He was such a cool dad. But it didn't make any sense to me. You'd go to breakfast, and we go to Shooby Dooby down to Ruby's Auto Diner in Laguna Beach. And I go, Dad, can I have some orange juice? No, we have that at home. And I'm like, okay.
But, wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, when it came to anything money, it was a really big, scary deal. We're wasting money. We need to save money. And so I grew up with this. And it was a really interesting thing I also grew up with, because they spent all their money to send me to private school in the next town over. In fact, I was made fun of as the poor kid. Even though my dad was in real estate, he was a top 10 real estate in Orange County. And in the early 90s, he was bringing in $400,000 to $500,000 a year. He sent me to the kids, the school where the kids' parents were multimillionaires at the time. So I was the poor kid, but we weren't poor. So there was this really growing up before the book came out of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, where my dad was rich, but in a different context, he wasn't. Because, Dad, how come we don't have a yacht? Dad, how come we don't have 3 homes? You know, that's what we were comparing it to, even though we still have the home today, which is in Laguna Beach, beautiful ocean views, and it's worth millions today, you know? And so I had this dichotomy, but I saw he was a workaholic, definitely was a workaholic. And he had this tight grip on money. And so I had a lot to do to work on that. A lot to do. And I have a lot to say about that. I would say one of the biggest things, and this is hard for people to hear, but because it sounds very counterintuitive, but one of the biggest things is beginning to recognize the power we give to money itself. And ironically, the more power you give to money, the more you can actually be repelling it. And when you give all your power to money, it has power over you. And so it's like whether you consciously or unconsciously do it, it becomes like your highest value. It becomes more important than anything. You sacrifice and say no to what is important for money, and you worship it like it is your God. And this is ingrained in our culture and society. Everything is telling us that once you have a certain amount, that you'll get your happily ever after and stuff like that. And so a lot of it was really hard because the more you want to break through this and you want something, and you're a business owner and you want your business to be successful, and you can't have a business be successful without money. You can't, there's no business out there that are successful and they go, how much money? Well, it doesn't actually make any money, but it's so successful. So the money is
Except
so...
when it's venture capital backed.
Right.
And there's no revenue model, but that's something separate.
That's a different, there's still money, it's just coming from a different source. And so it's so entrenched in our day to day. And I remember even seeing my Ewan, U-W-A-N, McGregor, nephew, when he was 2. And we went out to breakfast with the whole family, and he's trading sugar packets like money. He goes, $1 for you and $1. I'm like, uh-oh, he's already building his relationship with money. It starts this young.
It does.
And so it's like, if you're a business owner, well, if growing the business, making money isn't on you, then who, right? Because that's like pretty high up there on the list of priorities for us as business owners. So it was a very hard process for me to not put so much importance on money and soften my grip on that. And that was...
Right, especially when you watched your father, put so much focus on there not being enough of it, and also devote all of his time.
And make a lot of money, still be successful. But it was like the frequency of abundance was never there. Right. And so like...
you can totally have a lot of money without the frequency of abundance.
Absolutely you can. Absolutely you can. So I had to start with that. Then I read a book. I've read a lot of great books on money. And one of them was The Little Book of Abundance. I think I told you about that years ago. Did you not read that?
The Abundance book? The green one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've read that.
I have. It's great. I've done the practice many times.
Oh my gosh. And the one line that changed everything was the whole concept of changing the source of money. Yeah. Changed the game. Money is not your source. Money is not your source. And the source of money is not your clients, your employer, your boss. Like, whatever belief system is, label, whatever you want to call it. But the book basically says, John Randolph Pierce says, God is the source. And so things like money flow through you from that source, God, the universe. And I was like, and you just have to be open to it. And it I don't know what that did, but it totally changed it for me. Yeah. Even to just bring it down to a granular example, if you're like on a client call and you're pitching your services to them and you look at that person as if this is the source of my money, what happens? You start to get more needy and pushy and get all attached down. And then what do? They are going to be like coming on a little repulsive, strong, right? Yeah. And if you soften your grip and you're like on that, and you're just like, I'm always going to make what I'm going to make, and I'm always going to be fine. It might be 10 no's followed by 10 yeses. Right. so how am I supposed to know who it's coming through? And it allowed for a lot more detachment, and it allowed for me to just make my attention be more on the source than solely the 3D that's being represented.
Right. Source with a capital S.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that really helped me. But then here's what happens when you start with the money thing. I see it as two ways, because this is how it occurred to me. Is hopefully we can get these figured out at the same time. But for me, first, it was I had to learn how to make money.
Yeah.
But then it was a different skill on how to keep it.
It is two very different skill sets.
Yep. And then, of course, there's a third set.
And a lot of people who teach one don't teach the other, which is totally fine. But you do need to learn them.
Because they are completely different.
They're completely different. You need to learn them.
So I found myself now in a place where I was making more money, and it was I was not putting my attention on money, because there is a universal law that a lot of people have not heard of before. It's called enlightening, or the law of sacred reciprocity, which is for there to be, you see this in nature, but for there to be harmony and amplification, there needs to be a reciprocity. So that the energies need to balance out. It's this for this, quid pro quo, right? It's reciprocities. And that really is such a, I think today people talk about the law of attraction. I love talking about the law of attraction, all that type of stuff. But I think law of synchronicity, or
reciprocity.
Sorry, law of reciprocity is one of the most powerful laws, because if you just read a book on manifesting and you're not careful, it's all about how can I get more? How can I get mine? How can I get gimme.
I.
And no one ever sat there and said, what if I'm someone's manifestation?
Yeah.
What if I'm the answer to their prayers? What if I could be the answer to their question?
Yeah.
What if I could be the guiding light for that person? And that's what I started putting my attention on, was what if I could just be there for that person? What if there's somebody out there that's saying, I wish someone could just help me with this or do this, and I could be that for that person. And that wasn't about money. Okay, but then we need to get into 3D understandings of money, a little bit more 3D. And I firmly believe this. It's obviously nothing's universal, and there's always exceptions, but a lot of times the exceptions prove the rule, which is that when it comes to the world of teaching and coaching, people don't value what's free, okay? Now, there's always someone out there that's like, I do. It's like, I understand that, but you're probably not like everybody, right?
Right.
And that's fine, but I have seen tremendous things happen just when someone says yes to investing in something. That's when the magic occurs, because everything magical happens on the other side of a decision. But if there's no stakes in the decision, it's not a big decision.
Yeah.
So when they're sitting there and they're going, that's a lot of money. Oh, that's a lot of money. I don't know. And then they go, screw it, let's do it. That is one of the most beautiful things that you can do, because you had to weigh everything. You had to, and then it's a full body yes. And the money exchanges an energy and opens up to receive a different energy. Yeah. And so I've put my attention on, how do I create, manage, and foster those exchanges? And for me today, and I know we've talked about this, like when you're growing a business, what becomes your driver? And they've done studies, especially with like employees and morale, that money is one of the lowest forms of motivation. Like once you have enough, it doesn't drive most people for more. In fact, people that you think are driven by money are actually driven by other nasty things, like more power and significance than money. And they're like, if I had more money, then I have more power and significance. Right. Like the nasty kind of significance,
Right.
Like
and the nasty kind of power.
And the nasty kind of course.
Good power.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But power over people, right?
Exactly.
And so when I look at more money in our business and growing our business, I know the truth that money is merely a tool. So we don't need to give it as much power as we do. It's a tool. And we kind of have three resources in our life: our energy, our time, and we can use money as a byproduct of that. So if you want to go create something and you have a bunch of money as an energy, you can use that and get it created. You pay someone and get it created. If you didn't have that, you have to use your time and your energy. Mm-hmm. So the more we're growing in our business, the more of that, it's just an exchange. Right? It's like if I go to a different country and exchange dollars for pesos, I still have the same amount of money. It's just in a different currency. So I look at money as like, it's just a different currency in that way. And now I have that, so we can amplify our efforts. And we can do more today, be bigger today, help more people today, have better experiences today because there's more money coming in. And that is like such a, that was such a healthier way for me to look at it than just more. It's like, no, if we made more, we can do more.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Well, and there was this one particular year that you've told the story about, and I've found it personally very inspiring, when in one year you went from a $2 million in revenue the previous year to a 10.
Yeah.
That's a very big jump.
Yeah.
And beats a lot of statistical.
Yeah, our we have a CFO consultant, and
Yeah.
he's retired, but he was the CEO for freecreditreport.com. And so, you know, big website there. And they cashed out and made like a butt ton of money. And so for like fun,
he just helps.
Yeah, he helps. And he's like, I've never seen anything like this before. I'm like, what the heck are you doing?
What the heck are you doing? And so, like, obviously you could point to the 3D things, and those things matter, and we're going to get to that in a hot minute. Yeah. But from a non-3D perspective, because you and I both know that what creates the real transformation is not something that you do in the 3D. Like, you do need to know how to make the money, and the strategy does matter. But like, what?
Well, I've always
really
loved that quote:
happens?
the being is only the doing is only as good as the being doing the doing.
Exactly.
So like, if you look at every action you take or every word that comes out of your mouth, it has with it a unique energetic signature. So with what energy is that action taken? With what energy is that phrase saying? So it's like, I don't get it. I did everything that Kate's doing in her business, and I said everything that she's saying, and I'm not making the money that she's making. It's like, it doesn't matter if you just model. And that's why I was like, I don't think modeling is enough, because just like the same way, like, you don't want to take advice from someone that hasn't gone through something similar in the same vein than you have. Like, I don't want to talk to somebody on how to conquer fear if they're shaking in their boots every day, you know, but they said all the right things. Right. And that's when all of us have had an experience. All of us have had at least one experience where you hear somebody say something, and in your mind, you usually tell that person, you're like, I've heard this 1,000 times, but when you said it, it finally clicked. Okay. So what caused the 2 to 10?
Yeah.
Well, that's my secret funnel that I charge $8 million for. And, you know, once you opt in, I'll give you the secret.
Great.
No, I told my CFO, and he just kind of looked at me like, you're a weirdo.
Like, he was like,
the numbers don't lie, but you are a weirdo. And I just said, like, well, I finally conquered fear. And that's like what I told him. And then anytime I tell people that, they're like, okay, but what did you do? And the business was that's where he was.
It was the same business model.
It's the same business.
It wasn't a shiny new offer. It wasn't
same amount of offers, same amount of launches, and it was this. We do the same thing every year. We do the same thing
part
every
of the
year.
brilliance of your business.
It should be it's brilliant for everybody to do.
Well, it's now also the brilliance of our business.
Right. I'm just
yeah.
Want to make sure we got that on camera.
It wasn't for years, and I don't really have any regrets, but it's, you know, it is
totally
what it was.
So it was the same. I did the same thing.
You did the same thing.
It's like if every year you run a marathon, but then this year you did it 5 times faster.
Right.
And that's,
then you were faster.
I ran the same marathon, but we did it better. This is something we'll all have to face, and that's fear. And so fear has become it's a really interesting thing, because I think that's what it all comes down to. Now, for me, fear is the way I describe fear and my relationship with fear is it's something we feel in the body. It's an internal, you know, response we have. And again, there's different types of fears and different contexts for fears, but let's just keep it in the vein of business. To a large degree, there is an association with fear and something out in the future, our relationship with the future. Something we think that's going to happen. And it's obviously it would be something we don't want to have happen, right? So it's an unwanted future, and there's a level of belief or faith in that. So like I like to say fear is also a form of faith, right? Mm-hmm. We're just believing that something we don't want to have happen will happen. And when anybody does that, they're not going to feel comfortable, and they're going to be like, yeah, this feels really crappy in the body. And so here's the other thing is like we are born with fear. I've never met somebody that didn't, but maybe there are sociopaths or something that don't feel fear. But most of us do it. And then you go and start a business, and you do these things going into the unknown, outside your comfort zone, changing your entire life so that it's nothing like what was familiar in the past. So it's inevitable you're going to do this dance with fear, and it's unavoidable. And we kind of just like condition our life to just find a way to put up with it. And for me, fear had been like the air conditioner hum in your bedroom where it was like just there, but only slightly in the background. And you'd learn to just live with it. And I actually think that's how it is for most people, where it's like, I'll just like, oh, just don't look at that, and it will go away. And it's like, it's not going away. And then I got sued. And I was actually in Sedona, Arizona, with a buddy of mine when I got an email saying, basically it was like this big, bold email, like don't delete anything, don't delete texts, emails, any documents, because you are now being sued, basically. And my heart was beating faster than it's ever beat in my life. I got tunnel vision. I just couldn't breathe. I am freaking the F out. I'm being sued. That was a very, very scary experience for me because it brought up that 5% fear that had been in the background. And the 5% fear that had been in the background that I had been trying to push down, ignore, deny its existence was, this isn't going to last. What you've done is great, and it's a fluke, it's temporary, and it's only a matter of time before the other shoe falls and you lose it. And it's been a while keeping it going, so it's getting closer to this expiration date, right? And so the lawsuit was the physical evidence confirming truth in this fear that I had. So it took the 5% hum of the air conditioner and put it on freaking loudspeaker. I couldn't sleep. I remember like my wife, now ex-wife at the time, or was not, she was wife at the time, ex-wife now.
That.
Yeah, there we go. We're like crying ourselves to bed. And it was like, we weren't crying over the lawsuit. We were crying over like, well, it was fun while it lasted. You know what I mean?
Wow.
I had just bought my first home, so that was scary too. And just to put some context on, even all the attorneys and mediators said this is a total extortion case. They found a loophole. It's really nasty. And it's like they found a way in which you miscategorized an ex-employee. And so they got you. They got you. So there's nothing you can do. It's like you didn't do anything wrong, but you didn't, you know, it's like when you have freelancers versus employees, and they're going to report you. And when they report you, it's going to be a lot of money. So they got you. They got you. And I took myself down like really hard, and I did something that completely forever changed my life, which is I finally decided to like face this and look at it. And I took myself on my own like self-coaching, introspective recapitulation journey. I'm like, why can I not, I can't even like eat a meal. Like this is just pervasive. Like I can't function. This is just won't leave me alone. Like what is going on here? And I was so hell-bent curious, and I've been learning all these things over the years. And then of course, once you learn all these like energy manifestation frequency things, you're like, what am I attracting now that I'm feeling this way all day long? And it's just like, I was just driving myself insane. So I looked at it. And I think looking at it and facing it is the greatest thing that we can do, because fear is telling us not to look at it. And it's like, it already won. You know, it's got you. And so I was like, I'm going to look at this. And I was like, what am I so afraid of? And why am I so hooked by this? And like, why do I care so much? And I went down that, and it was like, obviously there was a fear of losing stuff, you know? It's like, well, I built something. I don't want to lose it. I was like, a waste of time. I have to start over, projecting new futures, unwanted, that I didn't want. I'd have to start over. I'd have to sell my house and da-da-da-da. And, you know, I've got I just bought a Tesla. I got this nice life now. And oh my gosh. And I kept going, and that's like the only way I can describe it. Like I just kept kind of looking at this like a Rubik's Cube from every angle. And I go, well, you know, I could start other businesses. And I go, no, but I love this one. And I go, why do I love this one? And that's when I had this like beautiful epiphany that, I've had all these other opportunities to start businesses. Like I love business. And even I was telling Mike before this, I'm like, I'm always looking to see if there's like a business I could buy. I think it'll be really fun. And I never have. I've never gone software, physical products, e-commerce, local. I've never done that. Why? Because I always come back to this one. Why? And it was the same thing that got me out of that depression all those years earlier, which is because it had been like 8 or 9 years since then, which is that feeling I got of helping somebody. And then I had the big, which I go, that's what matters to me. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And you could never take that away from me. So if that's what matters the most to me, and you can't take it away, what do I have to be afraid of? And that was the day, I know this sounds kind of cheesy, but like that was the day I conquered fear. And it was like I still can't describe fully. It was like the shackles came off and it was like I grew by 10 feet. Like it was like, and I passed this on to the team. Like that became our vision.
Yeah.
And we just said, this is what we're here to do. And we're going to fucking do it.
So great.
And we took the business from 2 to 10 million in that 1 year alone. And I didn't work any harder. It wasn't like, oh, I went from 4 hours to 12 hours. No, absolutely not.
Same business.
It was same business, same marathon, ran it again. But it was like with so much power, so much intensity, so much purpose, so much focus. And what I try to, the reason I tell that story to people today is because we all, and I didn't, we have no idea how much even just a little fear is holding you back, how much it's affecting the end game. And when you're in this type of industry where you're like here to help people, there is no room for that. There is absolutely no room for that. And I see that now. And it was like, that was just gone. And it was like everything exploded.
So cool. So cool. I love it so much.
So eventually, inevitably, everyone will have to do their dance with fear. And we want to face it. But here's kind of the hack to it. This is what I believe is the hack to it. This is what ultimately helped me, is that whatever it is you're afraid of, you have to find the way to be okay with the thing that you're afraid of. There's kind of like a derivative of it. It's like convince yourself why that would never happen. You know what I mean? Right? Where it's like, but I mean, that'll never happen because I could always move back and, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like, but you didn't really face it. If you go, I'm afraid of this happening.
Right.
And you go,
Play out the scenario.
and if it happened, everything will be okay.
Totally.
The moment you accept, because that, if we look at it like this, it's like, so time is this illusion, right? And the future is anything but certain. So I think this is a crazy concept. You tell me what you think of this. So we have, in our mind, we have all these different futures. So you have not necessarily you, but the metaphorical, the ominous is you that's around us listening. You have this, wouldn't that be nice if future? You have a vision for your business future. You have a, this is what I think is going to happen. This is what I'm afraid will happen. Oh, this would be worst case scenario. You have all these futures. And the one that you feed is the one that you start to live into. And the future that you live into and the future you feed is literally what creates you. And so who you are in the present is the byproduct of the future you choose to live into. So to see this beautiful dance and relationship with manifesting frequency, law of attraction, and your future is so fascinating to me, because it's like, that's where people talk about things like self-fulfilling prophecy. So what future am I feeding? And even if I'm resisting a future, I'm still feeding it. Yeah. So if I go, yeah, I could be broken homeless, I'll be fine. I'll get right back on my feet. Yeah, this could happen. I'll be fine. I'll get right back. I no longer give any power. All that power comes rushing back to you. Right. And with all of that power, you get to choose a more intentional future. You put 100%, like I look at ourselves as like a battery, so that's your power. You put 100% into that future, that's what creates you. And you literally become that future. And so the very things that you want, attract, manifest are like the natural byproduct of just who you are, your expression.
Yeah, and I think about it like you doing your launch that year and then in the year subsequent, there is there's just, it's such a clear tone that people could hear, right? Like when we are all broadcasting a signal, we are all also picking up signals at all times. And so fear, resistance, limitations, trauma, all of these things clog up our signal. They're static on the line.
Yes.
And you released a huge part of that. And so your signal just got so much stronger. And so all the people who were looking to pick it up, who couldn't pick it up before because there was static on the line, were able to find you.
Absolutely.
And
that goes back to what we were saying before. It was like, what if you're the answer to somebody's prayers? Yeah. And I do believe that. I do believe that in some cosmic weird way, especially right now, in some way, maybe I'm totally wrong, but it's like, I still like, I like this, so I just pretend it's true. That like, you know, the universe or God is sitting there and saying, this person can serve, so I will make sure that they get their people.
Yeah.
You know, this person is ready to, able to, their heart is in the right place. So I will bring them the people. And I believe in that. And you said something to me when we last talked over the phone that I don't think I'll ever be able to say as eloquently as you, but you just hit the nail on the head. And you said something to the effect of like, I bring so much truth and conviction on my work to what I do that I think it permeates people in such a way that they adopt it as their own. And it's like, that's it. Like, if you bring doubt in your own work, if you still don't believe in yourself, you think your customers are going to believe in you more than you do?
No, because they can feel it.
They can feel it. Even if they don't know it or recognize it consciously,
and I'm not saying like I don't have self-doubt, because that's different. But in terms of like the material that I teach, the research that I have done, and that's what I was saying, was my conviction is so strong because of the depth of the research and the depth of the practice that like no one can tell me otherwise. And so that slices through people's doubt because my frequency is so strong.
So much more powerful.
And it makes it very magnetic because people also love that level of alignment. And I mean, I love it in other people when there's that level of alignment and belief. You know, it's part of why I like to listen to your podcast and other ones, because there is that frequency. It just feels good to be around people who like really know what they're talking about.
And that's, And it's not in a place of like, I need to be right or anything. Like because
I also don't mind being corrected.
Right. And it's, you know, sometimes the whole right wrong thing is too binary. It's like, just because this works doesn't mean everything else is wrong.
And it doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody. But okay. So we could go so many more places, and I want to, but I'm gonna bring us home.
Bring it home.
Bring us home.
I'm gonna have some water while you bring us home.
Have some water. So I feel like you're a rare breed in that you are both very connected to the unseen and 5D and incredibly masterful when it comes to the 3D of business. And recently we were in Sedona visiting, and you said, while we were in your driveway, you were like, hey, what if I just was like your launch coach for fun for this launch coming up? And as a result of that, we dramatically increased our launch results. I mean, and it was amazing to make some of those tweaks on the 3D. There were a couple of belief things. There were like a couple of more invisible things, but it was quite tactical. And I'm curious. Well, there's a lot I could say about that. And, you know, I certainly will over emails and stuff. But but I want to know, in your daily life, like with your business and your team, can you paint a bit of a picture of the dance you're doing at all times between 3D practical, like digital business strategy, which you're incredible at, and the 5D world where like it's all energy and it's the unseen.
5D's here, you know?
At all times.
More people are waking up to that and whatnot.
So it wasn't really a question, but
no, it's great. It's great. Here's the way I look at it. If I was an architect, which my brother-in-law is an architect, and
Ewan's dad.
Yeah, there you go. There are structural principles to building a house, right? So, you know, you got to build your walls with your 2x4s 16 inches on center, right? I just point to Mike to make sure he knows that in case he's ever building another home, right? So, you know, we got to have our headers and our things. You got to, there's certain principles. And if you don't follow those principles, the house is going to fall apart.
Doesn't work.
Okay? Yeah. But then if you were an architect, you could begin to design a home in a very creative, out-of-the-box way that still falls within those
structurally
principles,
sound,
and it's still structurally sound. You know, and you look at like I've always loved mid-century modern, you know, and like Frank Lloyd Wright. It's like just incredible architecture, and I just love 50s and 60s architecture, and that was a really revolutionary, out-of-the-box approach to building a piece of architecture, a home, a building, and And that's how I look at business, is that there are absolutely universal business principles. I'll give you an example of one in a moment. That if you violate these business principles, it doesn't matter what dimension you're playing in, it's not going to work, because everyone else, we're still anchored in the 3D. Okay, so we're still in a 3D reality, and people are spending their 3D money.
Right, we still pay mortgages.
Right, exactly.
Buy groceries.
And we still have thinking brains, and we're making decisions that way, and we're humans in this human form. We have this human form. So when I understood business principles, I am creating in that space. And so Jen and I, my partner, she, like I said, she's very intuitive.
She's back, by the way.
She's back.
Well, it's just you didn't.
Well, that's a whole
other story.
That's a 20-year love story.
I know,
but
it's so good.
I blew it. I broke up with her.
But she sent you
got
the
married,
CDs
got
anyway.
divorced, and that she's the one. She sent me those CDs. It was so sweet, and we got back together and fell back in love. It's like we never weren't together. It was so bizarre. It's just like it's merging timelines.
Yeah.
So she's very intuitive, but when she came in, she didn't know a lot about this industry or marketing, and she would have these like nudges or hints, and I'd have to go, okay, and I would have to kind of take that energy and apply it in a business principle way. And so that's kind of my whole thing in a lot of ways. Like, if you understood how homes are made and you find yourself to be a very creative person, you could design a beautiful, amazing home, right? But if you didn't understand how homes are built, it would be really hard to just design a perfect home.
Yeah.
So like, that's how I look at it. It's like, it's merging the two worlds. And I think as I look back, hindsight of my own life, because I came from that world and opened myself up to this, I love that I can teach both because I have both experiences. So for example, what's a principle of business that anyone who's an online course creator, membership owner, they do coaching, one-on-one group, needs to know? The first principle is the law of preeminence. And the law of, never heard of this one, have you?
Nope.
But you have. It just has a fancy name. The law of preeminence is basically, it's as a fact, like you just can't refute this. You can try, but no one will buy from you if they don't perceive you as an authority, right? If you are not perceived as someone who knows what they're talking about, it's just like what we were talking about before from a more energetic standpoint. If they don't perceive you as an authority or an expert, they will not buy. No one goes, man, this person doesn't know shit, but take my money. I want to learn from you. Like, that just doesn't happen. So why is that an important principle? Well, a lot of times, and this is a big one, I'm seeing this a lot today, because if we're a coach, let's say everyone I'm talking to right now is a coach, and you're like, I want to market my business, and I'm on social media. You play in a pool with people called influencers today. And what's happening a lot of, just to go business route for a moment, is influencers are a very different business model. An influencer's job is just to get your attention, entertain, engage, get views. And so you see what influencers are doing, say, they got 1 million views. And you go, I'm going to do what they're doing. And you can run the risk of eroding and destroying the perception people have, your credibility, your authority, and all this stuff. And I see that happen all the time. It's like, you just did it for the views.
There's a lot of things I don't do that I could.
Yeah,
for that
of course.
Yeah.
Of course. If the name of the game was just get as many views as you could, there's a lot of things we could both be doing. And that's it, but I want to work with someone that needs to see my expertise, see what I have to offer. And that's that. So that's a great example of that. So there's all these principles that we work from, and I could go on and on in those. So as long as I have those and understand those, then I go, where are the energetics playing that? And like, you were kind of already, well, I brought it up to you about what you had shared with me, but like that energy, the dynamic between you and your audience, and tuning into that, how you're what energy you're projecting, what's drawing people in, what's repelling them, where are they at?
That's the 5D. But like, if I didn't know how to write the copy for to do the messaging for the landing page, and how to hook up the email with our CRM system, and how to write a nurture sequence, no one's on that Zoom anyway, so it's irrelevant.
Exactly. So there are 3D skills that are required,
you just need them.
And so like, one of the things when anybody's in any promotion, especially if it isn't doing well, like the first practice that I asked them to do, and I've only had one person in my entire year who experience of doing this, one person one time who couldn't do it. And basically they'll be in the middle of their launch or promotion, and I'll just say, I just want you to get quiet. And I just want you to tap in and connect with everybody who's paying attention to this and say, what is it that they need from you right now that will have them
It's great.
say yes? And everyone gets the answer and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't address this.
So great.
Go do it. And you need to know how to do that.
Yeah.
You need to know how to do that.
But that's such a perfect example of a 5D melding with a 3D strategy.
Here's another, exactly. Here's another 5D thing that's a really interesting thing. In the restaurant world, how does a restaurant grow their business? It's a very fascinating concept. They get a bigger restaurant. Like, it's so crazy. 9 times out of 10, if a restaurant just expands their amount of tables in the restaurant, they grow the restaurant. So you expand the container, and the universe fills the void. It's got to fill the empty space. So we are the same way, in that right now, I would like to offer, if anybody is a coach or online expert out there, there is, whether it's real or imagined, because it could be both, a size threshold of people that you believe you can take or be in front of or be seen by. And it's happening on your audience level, like over on Instagram. It's happening on a stage. If you want to go on a stage, I couldn't possibly do it in front of 10,000 people. Why is it any different? 10,000 versus 500? It's no different.
Actually, for me, if there's like 10 people, I'm terrified. But give me 10,000 and I'm like, great, let me do a show.
Because as soon as 2 of them go to the bathroom, you're like, uh-oh.
But if it's small, it's the worst. Anyway.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And then, of course, there's your program. And that's a piece. That's a very interesting piece. People will reach a point where they go, I don't think I can handle any more people. I think this is all I can work with. And that's a muscle to be expanded. And that's an energetic muscle. And that gets into a whole interesting dynamic, like with holding a space in a container for people, and how do you do that at such scale? And that takes work. So, you know, my spiritual mentor said this, and he said, perception is everything. And I chew on that all the time. So if you can be building this 3D business and have a 5D perception of it at all times, you're going to be just fine. Which is, if something isn't working, if something is not off, can you begin to cultivate more of a 5D perception? It's like, what is it I'm not seeing here? Where is the energy stuck?
Which sometimes, like, the message you might get of what is not working here might be a 3D thing that you need to change.
Absolutely.
And so I also love, like, maybe it's like this headline is wrong, or maybe it's that, you know, you didn't address the objections, or maybe, I love that. This has been great.
Okay, good.
Thank you. Okay, good. You passed.
Oh, it's going to get aired.
We're going to air it.
Okay.
So it's good. And I know that you have this resource called the Digital CEO Dashboard. And I found it really helpful.
It's really cool.
I actually filled it out during our launch.
Okay.
And it helped me sort of like keep myself between the ditches, because I am very distractible. I have 800 million ideas and I want to chase them all.
Yeah.
And so, can you tell us what that is? And then I'll tell people where to find it.
It's very easy for people to get overwhelmed and to get in what I was doing, where you're like, stay busy but not really doing anything.
Yes, very common, very common.
And so the challenge for me was, can I put my entire business on a single piece of paper? And I think there's something to be said about keeping something simple. Simple doesn't mean easy, but simple doesn't mean lazy either. It's like, it's actually a lot of work to make something simple, or the word I prefer is elegant. And elegance is the least amount of steps required to get the intended result. And so I really love an elegant business. And so this one sheet dashboard is an elegant framework to put your entire business into. And it's a reverse engineering process of the 3 primary metrics that every business should be focusing on, and the milestones and the KPIs, if you will, to get there.
Key performance indicators.
The key performance
for those who don't
I call
know
them the
what that
metrics
means.
that matter.
I like that so much better because I don't speak corporate.
Okay.
And so the first time somebody said KPIs, I really should have known what it was. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
So I call them metrics that matter, but a lot of people hear it as KPIs. So and just puts it all on one sheet of paper. And here's what's beautiful about this sheet is that if your business isn't where you'd like it to be, I can guarantee you it's because you're missing one of those numbers. Or you're missing the strategy to drive the number. And it's so important because how many people are like, I got to be everywhere all the time. I don't have time for all this. It's like, you don't need to be, but you do need these 3 metrics, and you need to have a strategy for each one of those. And it helps like reverse engineer that so you have a plan.
Yeah, I mean, that's like your blueprint, back to the
It is.
architecture.
Yeah, no, it is. It becomes the
framework.
entire blueprint for the business. And it just gives a lot of clarity and simplicity.
Amazing.
So
Amazing. Okay, so folks can go download that over at katenorthrup.com/James.
And obviously I walk you through how to fill it out.
Yes.
I'm not gonna leave you.
And it's timely because behind the scenes, once you get that, you'll also get insider access to an invitation to a free training that James has coming up that goes even deeper, called The Rise of the Digital CEO.
Yeah.
So make sure you go do that now, katenorthrup.com/James.
Beautiful.
James, where else can people connect with you if they want to learn more, if they want to talk more about the 5D, money, God, source?
I have a podcast.
Aliens.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We didn't go there today.
I should have a secret Instagram account where I share all my UFO sightings, which I have on my phone. Have I shown you those?
No, but I will tell you this. Penelope, our oldest, made this memory book for the end of the year, and she drew some of her favorite memories from the year, and one of them was standing on your balcony using the night vision goggles. Thought you would think
No
that was
way!
sweet. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh,
She
that's
loved it.
awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
Anyway, so UFO sightings.
That's now my favorite memory. My podcast, Mind Your Business Podcast. There we go. There we go. Mind Your Business Podcast. That's my podcast, and I'm also on Instagram at James Wedmore, being a total goofball on there. So if you want if you don't have a sense of humor, don't follow me on Instagram. But if you want a good laugh, go find me there.
Thanks for being here today.
Yeah. Thanks, Kate.